So, welcome back. We have looked at how SAM is structured with different components starting with LE, PP memory and script applier, then followed up by question answering and paraphrase generation. And we have said that this program SAM has been input with certain sets of situations. It knows about certain things, train wrecks and political visits and so on, state visits. This is what we are going to see now. And can understand stories if they conform to one of the scripts essentially. So, let us look at this small story. Sunday morning, Enver Hoxha, the Premier of Albania, and Mrs. Hoxha arrived in Peking at the invitation of the Communist China. The Albanian party was welcomed at Peking airport by Foreign Minister Huang. Chairman Hua and Mr. Hoxha discussed economic relations between China and Albania for 3 hours. So, this is what is told to you essentially. So, you have to make connections. For example, the Albanian party is Mrs. Hoxha and Enver Hoxha essentially. And this chairman Hua is the chairman of the Communist Party in China. And it has been told to us that they discuss economic relations between China and Albania. So, let us go over this story in detail. I will show you the output as was generated by SAM. We will not go into the specifics because they are just too vast essentially, but we will get a feel of how SAM ends up creating the story. So, this is some kind of a design to give you a feel of what is happening. It is happening in 1976 as you can notice. So, we have started this program called Applier, which is the script applier, and at this moment it has got 3 scripts in its memory. One is a train wreck script, one is a VIP visit script and one is a vehicle accidents script. And now it is going to wait for input. So, we have started the program and the program has got these 3 situations that it can understand, and hopefully the story that will come in will be one of these 3. The VIP visit script, which is what we are interested in here, has component scripts for traveling, for things like parades, maybe banquets and discussions of course. So, now it is waiting for input. The first line is fed in and the program here is called parser, which is basically LE, and the story that we have just read, the first line is being converted into conceptual dependency. We have already seen how this kind of thing happens, and you can hopefully recognize that we are creating conceptual dependency conceptualizations here. So, for example, there is an actor with some temp 32, then action called P trans, and there is a sense of direction to the inside part of something which is a municipality with political name Peking. So, Beijing was used to be called Peking when this program was written, and some things which you do not know. So, you just leave it as blanks essentially. So, there is some mode, there is some time and so on and so forth essentially. It creates different tokens to which different conceptualizations are attached essentially. So, for example, the time is day part, morning, weekday, Sunday. Parser can kind of make out that there is some invitation happening here, and so there must be an inviter, there must be an invitee, and there must be some object of the invitation. We know that the inviter is Communist China because that is what the sentence says, arrived at the invitation of Communist China. So, it has created this representation. The actor is a token called temp 32, which is as follows. It is a group, it has got members. One is a feminine whose last name is Hoxha, the other one is masculine whose first name is Enver and whose last name is Hoxha, whose title is Premier, and he is the Premier of Albania, which is a nation. So, it has figured all this out and said that this is the actors who were invited. It is a group, it is not just one person. So, it creates some representations, we will not go into the details here. It creates tokens at different levels. So, LE creates some tokens, then PP memory, which they call as toke here, matches those tokens with his semantic memory, and then the applier will create its own tokens, because it has got roles and props to be filled up. So, it is basically putting together different tokens. We will not go into the details here. So, it has created these two tokens hum1 and hum2, presumably for Mr. and Mrs. Hoxha. There is some political thing happening here, and so on. So, there are two entities, one polit1 and polit2. It is simply creating new tokens by combining ones received from the parser. The PP memory recognizes that we are talking about VIPs here. So, it identifies some permanent tokens like the premier of a country and the chairman of the Communist Party and this kind of stuff. So, it does that match. The parser has not bothered about where the Hoxhas came from or how they reached there. PP memory also has no idea how or why they have come as of now. There are no suggestions for what script would be applicable at this stage. We only know that somebody has been invited and the inviter is China. Now, the script applier comes into action and it is trying to search through its memory of scripts. So, remember it has got these three situations, and it searches first through the train wreck script and that fails. Then it goes to the VIP visit script and it founds that something has been recognized, that there is a state invitation being done from one political entity, which is a nation, to another. So, it is a VIP track of the VIP visit is activated. So, it now knows what to expect essentially. So, we will skip some of those details. It still does not know how they came. So, there is some binding contradiction as to which organization transported this person, but it knows that the invited group has retransed themselves to the inside part of their initial destination. Successful match for derived pattern. Again, as I said, we will not go too much into detail, but hopefully it will give you a flavor of how these programs used to operate. The Albanian party was welcomed at Peking airport by Foreign Minister Huang. So, it is making that next statement. It already has working with the VIP visit script. So, it knows that there is a welcome scene and there is going to be some banquet or parade and talks and things like that. All those things are possible. Now, it is talking about who is the welcomer. It is Huang, and he is a foreign minister and so on. And the welcomed group is from Albania, and they arrived somewhere near the Peking airport. So, this is recognized as a welcome scene of the VIP visit. Applier now needs to make sense of the fact that they are all at the airport. It will infer that the invitees flew in, because if you are being welcomed at the airport, you must have flown in. So, airport implies flying is a means of transport. So, again it searches through its scripts and finds some match of some backbone, some part of the script. So, there is a derived pattern that an airline was responsible for bringing them, because they are near the airport. So, the welcoming event is happening and it can figure out that some airline has brought them, and it is merging the two tokens. The Albanian couple and Mr. and Mrs. Hoxha is the same, is what it is saying now. Then it reads the third line. The chairman Hua and Mr. Hoxha discuss economic relations between China and Albania for 3 hours. So, that is again translated into conceptual dependency. You can see that the main thing that is happening is M-trans here, which is mental transfer, and these are concepts regarding economy something, and there are two parties that are discussing this. So, one is the Albanian party and one is the Chinese party, and they are using the speak action of conceptual dependency. So, from the conscious processor of one party to the conscious processor of the other party essentially, and it has identified that this is a group which was talking, that these two individuals were talking to each other and they were talking about some economic contract or something. So, now you have the story which is represented, which of course does not look like a English language story here. It is just a collection of tokens and events which are put together in a structure. So, it is doing all this stuff, making different sub scenes. So, sub scene for arrival, for welcome, for talk, and all this is happening in VIP visit screen. So, it creates some kind of an event graph that these are the events which happened. So, as we said, you can create a summary. This is the summary in English. Premier Enver Hoxha, the Albanian government head, and chairman Hua Kyo-feng, the China government head, discussed Albanian Communist China economic affairs. So, all these details which are not mentioned in the story are recognized because they recognize the permanent tokens. And as you can see, we have a summary in English. So, this is one of the plus points of using something like conceptual dependency, which is a canonical representation of actions and states in a language, is that you can now work with different languages, and in fact, machine translation can be done simply by reading the input story that we saw and generating this as an output. So, we have machine translation, but there is a lot of machinery which goes behind this, which is one of the reasons why it is not being used currently. So, let us look at question answering for this story. Again, this was the work of Wendy Lehnert. So, the question is given to the parser who went to China, and it parses the question and creates this structure that some actor temp 8 p-transed temp 8 to part of political type China. From it is not given as to from where they came, the question does not say from where it came, and it does not talk about what is the instrumental act essentially. The question is this people who went to China, who are these people? So, now the input to question answer program, which is Wendy Leherner's program, is to find a match for this conceptualization in which there is some variable sitting here, and we want to know what is the value of the variable. So, this should take you back to the kind of things that we did with first order logic as well. Only thing is, in this case we are not doing deduction and making inferences. What we are doing is that we have kind of created a story based on the scripts that we have understood, and we are using that to find an answer here. So, as you can imagine, it has an explicit story representation. It will search through that, find the match and give out the answer. So, this is the answer in English. Premier Enver Hoxha and Mrs. Hoxha, these are the people. The question was who went to China, and the answer is Premier Enver Hoxha and Mrs. Hoxha. But to generate this answer, we have to go back to the explicit representation of the story that script applier has made, and in that you will find the answer to these kind of questions. So, the story does not talk of anyone going to China. They said that they arrived at Peking airport and stuff like that. But in the explicit representation of the story, we know exactly what is happening. Here is another question which follows the first question presumably. How did they get to China? So, we already know who went to China, which is those two persons, and now we are asking how did they go there. So, again we are saying that we are looking for this p-trans, and we are looking for the instrumental act which enabled this p-trans essentially. So, that instrumental act is what we are looking at. So, the question is to generate this conceptualization with this variable here and look for a match in the story, and whatever this matches, that is the answer. So, there is some organization which p-transed them to, which p-transed group 0 to wherever they were going essentially. And the answer generated is that these two persons, they flew to communist China. How did they go there? They flew to communist China. The story representation contains the inferred episode that they have flown to China, and therefore, it can generate this answer. So, this should give us some idea. We will look at one last question before we wind up our study of scripts. Why did they go to China? Why did Enver Hoxha go to China? And then, if you remember that we had these kind of either between this or there were states involved, but basically what is a causal connection between two conceptualizations, and that is the kind of thing that is being asked here essentially. And that is, what is it that leads to their going to China? So, that is again a blank in the conceptualization. So, you look for this conceptualization in the explicit story, and whatever matches here will be generated into an English language answer. Because they had this wanted to exchange information about concepts regarding some contracts from the conceptual processor of one, and that is the goal of this group essentially. So, they had this goal of discussing about contracts. Okay, so here was a quick look at scripts. We will come back and wind up for with a few loose ends that are remaining, and that should end our treatment of scripts.